A church where God's presence is prized and where God is enthusiastically worshipped with genuine freedom for men and women to worship publicly in the Holy Spirit, to use spiritual gifts and to participate in body ministry.
We've been talking largely about spiritual gifts that fit in a context of corporate worship, but obviously there are spiritual gifts that don't necessarily always feature exclusively in that context. Particularly things like prophecy can go beyond that, and other spiritual gifts, healing often can be beyond the walls of the church, obviously can happen during worship as well. How do you think we cultivate the spiritual gift of healing? How important do you think that it is?
I think it's an important point you're raising, because when we talk about being a charismatic church, which was your initial question, really charismatic is talking about the gifts of the Holy Spirit. We're talking about God.
Not a style of worship.
That's right. God's with us by his Spirit. And yes, some of those things will be when we're together in meetings. Some of those, like Jesus walking down the street, is healing the sick. And even with into the book of Acts, with Peter and Paul in the open air, they're healing the sick. It's not just associated with meetings, but certainly we can expect the manifestation of God in meetings. Wendy was at a midweek, what we call zone meeting here in Brighton last night, and she spoke about a healing. And God can heal wherever he pleases. I've just been to the USA, had the joy of praying for a lady, her first time in church, and she came, she saw I was praying for the sick at the end of the meeting. She said she had arthritic pain all up the top of her spine. It was really awful. And I'd prayed for several others. I just laid my hand on her head and prayed for this arthritic pain to go. And she just began to weep. And then she moved her head and I said, I felt it melt away when you prayed for me. This arthritic pain all down her neck. And it was her first time at church. I mean, she went away a happy churchgoer. And I was in the church in Oxford where a girl was there. And it was in her first meeting in the church. She got healed. I mean, coming to church and being healed is pretty exciting. And why not? So certainly we want healing to be part of our life together as the people of God. And again, when we talk about in church, it really isn't such a biblical concept. Now, it does say when you come together. So yeah, there is a setting where we gather. But yeah, when we're together, why not? There should be some healings. God's with us. And Jesus said it'll be better for you when I've physically gone. When the Spirit comes, we should be looking for everything that was there when Jesus was here.
When Paul writes to the Corinthians, he's evidently commending their zeal for spiritual gifts, but wanting to remind them, hang on a minute, there are unbelievers in your midst. Be sensitive to that. I guess often people choose one or the other of those two things. We're spiritual gifts crazy in our church, we love it. Or no, we're seeker. We are sensitive to unbelievers, that's our way. But you would want to combine both, encourage people to be mindful of the unbeliever present and pursue spiritual gifts.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that we can have some meetings that are in-house where one can be forgetful of the outsider. But the more we are conscious that we are here to win the lost for Jesus, the more we want to be sensitive to their presence and help them to feel at home with us.
And yet at the same time, you don't want to sacrifice a longing to genuinely encounter God for the sake of trying to make people feel comfortable.
No, absolutely. And as I say, I think even when I saw the extraordinary manifestations of the Spirit that happened in the early 90s, and people were being literally physically moved and thrown about, and I was in a meeting where there were people there who were unsaved, they were fascinated. They would say, oh, what's all this? I mean, religious people said, oh, what's going on? But outsiders, I had conversations with people who were walking around. I actually said to them, what do you think of this then? And they said, that didn't seem to worry them. I mean, they may not expect it in church, and I'm not looking for it in church, but I think we can be kind of super sensitive